Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the only place where common sense is still legal and where we aren't afraid to tell you the uncomfortable truths that the mainstream media is desperately trying to sweep under the rug. We have a story coming out of New York City today that is going to make your blood boil, but frankly, it shouldn't surprise a single one of you who has been paying attention to the absolute erosion of our national sovereignty over the last few years. The Big Apple is in full meltdown mode, total panic, because federal immigration authorities finally decided to do their job. And let me tell you, the reaction from the local politicians tells you everything you need to know about who they really serve, and I'll give you a hint, it isn't the law-abiding American citizen. Here is the situation on the ground. A staffer for the New York City Council, a government employee whose salary is paid for by the hardworking taxpayers of New York, was detained by ICE agents. Now, watch how the media frames this. They are screaming that this individual was apprehended while attending a routine court appointment, as if walking into a courthouse gives you some kind of magical immunity shield against federal law. They are clutching their pearls, crying about overreach, and wailing about how this destroys trust in the government. But let's take a step back and look at reality through the lens of sanity for just a second. Since when did enforcing the law become a dangerous overreach? Since when did we decide that working for a local government entity grants you a special pass to bypass the scrutiny of federal immigration enforcement? The city council officials are furious. They are condemning this action, calling it aggressive. They are acting like ICE agents stormed a kindergarten, when in reality, they apprehended an adult individual at a courthouse. Let's talk about that location for a moment because it is crucial. A courthouse is the seat of the law. It is where justice is supposed to be administered. If you are walking into a court of law, you are entering a space where the rule of law is paramount. The idea that a courthouse should be a safe haven for anyone violating federal statutes is ludicrous on its face. If you have nothing to hide, if your status is ironclad, if you are following the rules of this country to the letter, you have nothing to fear from federal agents. But the outrage we are seeing suggests that these officials believe their employees should be above the law, simply because they work for the right kind of progressive bureaucracy. Now, the media and the city council are waving a piece of paper around like a golden ticket. They claim this staffer had legal work authorization valid until 2026. And this is where we need to have a very serious, adult conversation about what is happening to our immigration system. The phrase work authorization is being used as a shield to shut down any inquiry. But having a work permit is not the same as having citizenship, and it certainly isn't the same as having a clean record or a permanent right to be here if other conditions are violated. We have seen time and time again how the administrative state hands out these authorizations like candy during Halloween, often to individuals whose asylum claims are flimsy at best or who have entered the country through loopholes that were never intended to be exploited on this scale. We have to ask the hard questions that the New York Times refuses to ask. Why is a non-citizen working in a sensitive position within the city council in the first place? I'm sure there are plenty of American citizens in New York, born and raised, or legal immigrants who went through the long, expensive, and arduous process of naturalization, who would love to have a government job with benefits. Why are we prioritizing the employment of foreign nationals in our local governments? This is the heart of the America Last mentality that has infected our major cities. They prioritize the outsider over the constituent. they prioritize the global citizen over the American neighbor. And when the federal government steps in to assert the basic principle that immigration laws actually mean something, the local elites act like it's a human rights violation. Let's dig deeper into this work authorization narrative because it is a masterful piece of deflection. Just because you have a card that says you can work, it doesn't mean you are immune from detention. ICE does not just go around grabbing people for sport, they have limited resources and they have specific targets. If this individual was detained, there is a very high probability that there is more to the story than the innocent civil servant picture being painted by the city council. Was there a violation of the terms of the visa? Was there a prior order of removal that was ignored? Was there criminal activity that invalidated their status? We don't know yet because the privacy laws protect the individual, but the politicians are exploiting that silence to paint the federal agents as the villains. It is the classic Democrat playbook: attack law enforcement to distract from the failure of policy. This incident creates a climate of fear, they say. Let's analyze that phrase. A climate of fear for whom? If you are an American citizen, or a legal resident abiding by the laws, seeing ICE agents enforce immigration statutes doesn't make you afraid. It makes you feel secure. It tells you that your government is actually functioning. It tells you that borders exist and that laws matter. The only people who should feel a climate of fear are those who are breaking the law. That is literally the point of law enforcement. Speeders fear highway patrolmen. Tax cheats fear the IRS. And people violating immigration laws should fear ICE. That is not a bug in the system, and that is a feature. It is called deterrence. When you remove the fear of consequences, you get chaos. You get what we have seen at the southern border for years, a total free-for-all because everyone knows that once you get in, you are untouchable. New York City has prided itself on being a sanctuary city. They have spent years signaling to the world that if you come here illegally, or if you overstay your welcome, we will protect you. We will give you free housing in luxury hotels, we will give you prepaid debit cards, and we will shield you from the big, bad federal government. Well, folks, the chickens are coming home to roost. You cannot run a city within a country and declare yourself exempt from the laws of that country. It is a rebellion against the Constitution. When New York officials say this arrest undermines public trust, they are lying to you. What undermines public trust is watching your city crumble, watching your tax dollars vanish into a black hole of migrant services, and watching your elected officials fight harder for a detained staffer than they do for the victims of crime in the subway system. The arrogance of these local leaders is truly breathtaking. They are exploring all legal options to challenge this. Think about the waste of resources there. Instead of fixing the potholes, instead of cleaning up the streets, instead of addressing the homelessness crisis that is plaguing veteran communities, the city council is going to use your tax money to sue the federal government to get their employee back. It is a redistribution of wealth from the law-abiding citizen to the legal defense fund of someone who has been flagged by federal immigration authorities. It is a slap in the face to every legal immigrant who stood in line, who paid the fees, who took the oath, and who respects the sovereignty of the United States. And let's talk about the timing. We are seeing a shift in this country. The American people are waking up. They are realizing that compassion without borders is just national suicide. This detention in New York isn't an isolated incident, it is a signal. It is a signal that the era of looking the other way is coming to an end. The administrative state, the deep state bureaucrats who have been rubber stamping these work permits and looking the other way, they are on notice too. The law is the law. It is written in black and white. It is not a suggestion. It is not a guideline that you can choose to follow if it aligns with your political feelings that day. It is the bedrock of our republic. You hear them say the staffer was complying with the law. This is linguistic gymnastics. You can be complying with local ordinances while simultaneously violating federal statutes. This is the conflict that the Civil War settled a long time ago. A federal law reigns supreme. You cannot have 50 different immigration policies. You cannot have New York running its own foreign policy. But that is essentially what they are trying to do. They are trying to create a state within a state where federal agents are treated like foreign invaders. It is dangerous, it is divisive, and it is fundamentally un-American. The transparency they claim to care about is a one-way street. They want transparency from ICE, but where is the transparency regarding how this individual was hired? Did they pass a background check? Did the hiring manager know about their immigration status? Or was this a diversity hire meant to signal virtue to the progressive base? We need to understand the psychology of the modern liberal politician. To them, the government exists not to serve the citizen, but to employ the activist. The bureaucracy is a jobs program for the ideologically aligned. And when one of their own is touched, they react with the ferocity of a wounded animal. It's tribalism, pure and simple. They don't care about the integrity of the system, they care about protecting their tribe. This detained employee is a member of the protected class, the government class. If ICE had raided a construction site and picked up a dozen guys, you might get a press release. But because they touched a city council employee, it is a constitutional crisis. It shows you the hierarchy. In their eyes, government workers are special. They are the nobility. You, the taxpayer, you are the serf. You follow the rules. They make the rules, and they break them when it suits them. The fact that they are struggling to contact the facility is being played up for sympathy. Welcome to the real world. If an American citizen gets arrested, their family often struggles to get information in the first few hours. It's called the criminal justice system. It's not a concierge service. Why should this case be any different? Why should a city council badge grant you VIP access to a federal detention center? Again, it is the entitlement. They believe they are owed special treatment. They believe that a phone call from a local politician should make the gates open and the laws disappear. It is the arrogance of power, and it is exactly what the founders warned us about. Let's look at the bigger picture here. Why is ICE moving now? Maybe, just maybe, the agencies are finally being unshackled. For too long, federal law enforcement has been held back by political handcuffs. They have been told to stand down, to prioritize catch and release, to focus only on the most violent offenders while letting everyone else slide. but a nation cannot survive if it only enforces 10% of its laws. That is anarchy with a coat of paint. If you overstay a visa, if you violate the terms of your entry, you are deportable. That is the law. It doesn't matter if you are a nice person. It doesn't matter if you have a job. It doesn't matter if you work for the city council. The law is blind, or at least it is supposed to be. The reaction from New York is a frantic attempt to maintain the illusion of control. They know that if the federal government starts seriously enforcing immigration laws in sanctuary cities, their entire house of cards collapses. Their economy, which relies on cheap, under-the-table labor, takes a hit. Their voter base, which they are actively trying to expand to include non-citizens, gets nervous. Their moral superiority complex gets punctured. They are fighting for their political survival. This isn't about one employee. This is about the power of the local machine versus the sovereignty of the nation. And frankly, it is a fight that the nation needs to win. Think about the precedent. If we allow New York City to effectively nullify federal immigration law, what's next? Can Texas decide it doesn't want to follow EPA regulations? Can Florida decide it's ignoring the IRS? We are the United States of America, not a loose confederation of city-states. The supremacy of federal law regarding borders and naturalization is explicit in the Constitution. New York doesn't get a veto. Mayor Adams doesn't get a veto. The city council definitely doesn't get a veto. They can complain, they can hold press conferences, they can cry on CNN, but they cannot legally obstruct the enforcement of the law. And let's not forget the climate of fear argument is a psychological weapon. They use it to silence you. If you support ICE, they accuse you of wanting to terrify people. They try to make you feel guilty for wanting your country to have borders. Don't fall for it. It is not hateful to want safe communities. It is not racist to want a legal immigration system. It is simply common sense. Every other country on the face of the earth enforces its borders. Try walking into Canada or Mexico or Switzerland and demanding a government job without proper, permanent status. See how that works out for you. They would laugh you out of the room, or they would deport you. Only in America, and specifically in these Democrat-run strongholds, is it considered controversial to enforce the law. So, as we watch this drama unfold, keep your eye on the ball. Do not get distracted by the sob stories. Look at the facts. A federal agency, acting within its jurisdiction, detained an individual. The local government is trying to interfere. That is the story. It is a story of rebellion. It is a story of a system that has forgotten who it serves. And it is a reminder that we have a long, long way to go to restore order in this country. But incidents like this? They are a start. They are a sign that perhaps, just perhaps, the rule of law is starting to fog up the mirror again. It's showing signs of life. And for the patriots out there watching, that is the best news we've heard in a long time. Let's zero in on this magical date that the media keeps repeating, at 2026. They tell us this staffer had authorization until 2026, as if that settles the debate. but anyone who understands the labyrinth of our broken immigration system knows exactly what that date likely represents. It isn't a badge of honor, it is a monument to bureaucratic failure. In many cases, these extended work permits are handed out simply because the immigration courts are so backed up that they cannot hear cases for years. We are in a situation where you can cross the border, claim asylum based on a script you learned on TikTok, and get a piece of paper that says, "Come back in 4 years." In the meantime, here is a work permit, go get a job in the government. It is a catch-and-release program disguised as a legal process. The year 2026 doesn't mean this person has a definitive right to be an American, it just means the system is too incompetent to process them sooner. The City Council wants you to believe that authorization equals untouchable. But let's look at the fine print of federal law. Work permits can be revoked. Parole status can be terminated. If ICE moved in to detain this individual, they didn't do it on a whim. They had probable cause. Perhaps the initial claim for asylum was found to be fraudulent. Perhaps there is an association that flagged a national security database. We don't know, but the reflexive defense by New York politicians assumes that the federal government is wrong and the foreign national is right. That is the default setting of the modern Democrat Party. America is always the villain, and anyone challenging our sovereignty is the victim. It is a pathology of self-loathing that has infected the highest levels of our municipal governments. And consider the sheer hypocrisy of that sanctuary philosophy. These politicians sit behind armed guards. They work in buildings with metal detectors. They live in gated communities or secure apartment complexes. They love borders and security when it applies to their own personal safety. But when it comes to your country, your neighborhood, and your job market, they demand open borders. They demand that we erase the line between citizen and non-citizen. When they hire a non-citizen for a city council staffer position, they are sending a message to every young person in New York: citizenship holds no value. You don't need to be a part of the civic body to help run it. It devalues the very concept of the social contract that binds us together as a nation. We also need to talk about the climate of fear narrative again, because it is the most manipulative tool in their arsenal. They claim that enforcing the law prevents people from cooperating with the government. But let's look at the reality of crime in New York City right now. We have migrant gangs on mopeds snatching phones and purses. We have assaults on police officers where the perpetrators are released without bail before the paperwork is even dry. Who is creating the real climate of fear? Is it ICE agents detaining a staffer with questionable status? Or is it the policies that have turned Times Square into a free-for-all? The average New Yorker is terrified, not of federal agents, but of the lawlessness that the city council has enabled. They are afraid to ride the subway at night. They are afraid for their property values. But the city council doesn't hold press conferences for them. This detention at the courthouse is actually a masterclass in tactical efficiency, and we should applaud it. Think about it logistically. Why chase someone through the streets, risking a high-speed pursuit or a standoff? Why raid a home where there might be weapons or children present? Catching them at a courthouse, where they have already passed through security, where they are contained, is the safest possible way to execute a warrant. It protects the officers, it protects the public, and yes, It even protects the detainee. But the left spins this as a trap. They want the law to be unenforceable. If you can't arrest them at home because it's inhumane, and you can't arrest them at work because it disrupts the economy, and you can't arrest them at court because it undermines trust, then where exactly can you arrest them? The answer, in their view, is nowhere. They want de facto amnesty through the elimination of enforcement zones. The fact that this happened to a government employee is the bitter pill they cannot swallow. It bursts their bubble. These people live in an echo chamber where they tell each other that they are the moral arbiters of the universe. They believe their ID badges give them diplomatic immunity. When reality comes crashing in the form of federal handcuffs, it shatters their worldview. They are suddenly forced to realize that they are not kings and queens of New York, they are subject to the same statutes as everyone else. The wailing and gnashing of teeth we are hearing is the sound of an entitlement complex dying a painful death. They are offended that the federal government dared to enter their fiefdom and snatch one of their vassals. Let's follow the money, because that is where the real scandal usually lies. This staffer was on the payroll. That means your tax dollars, federal, state, and city taxes, were going into the pocket of someone who ICE determined should be in custody. We are funding our own replacement. And now, the City Council is exploring legal options. Do you know what that means? It means they are going to take more of your money to hire high-priced lawyers to sue the federal government, which is also funded by your money. You are paying for both sides of this lawsuit. You are paying for the prosecution and the defense. It is a money laundering operation for the legal industrial complex, all designed to protect a policy that the majority of Americans oppose. It is fiscal insanity. And we must ask, what kind of sensitive information did this staffer have access to? Working for the city council isn't like flipping burgers. You have access to internal memos, future planning, constituent data, perhaps even security protocols for city buildings. We have absolutely no idea who this person really is. If their background check was as flimsy as the border vetting process, we could have a serious insider threat on our hands. But nobody is talking about national security. They are too busy talking about feelings. In a sane country, a government employee detained by immigration authorities would trigger an immediate internal investigation and a security audit. In New York, it triggers a pity party and a protest. This is why the phrase "America First" scares them so much. Because if you actually put America first, this entire situation becomes absurd. If you put America first, a government job goes to an American citizen. If you put America first, the budget goes to homeless veterans before it goes to legal defense for detainees. If you put America first, ICE is the hero, not the villain. The City Council operates on an America Last platform. They put the ideology of globalism ahead of the reality of their own constituents. They would rather look virtuous to the United Nations than look competent to the voters in Queens or Staten Island. We are watching a collision course between two visions of the future. One vision is a nation of laws, borders, and distinct citizenship. The other vision is a borderless administrative zone where residency is just a temporary state of mind and laws are optional suggestions based on your victim status. This arrest is a flashpoint. It is a skirmish in the larger war for the soul of the country. And the fact that New York officials are doubling down, rather than admitting there might be a problem with their vetting, shows you that they are not interested in compromise. They are interested in capitulation. They want the federal government to bow down to the whim of the city council. There is also a psychological element of gaslighting here. They use words like undocumented or newcomer to sanitize the reality of illegal or deportable. They try to manipulate language to make you feel like the bad guy for noticing that something is wrong. When they say this arrest undermines transparency, they are Orwellian in their speech. Real transparency would be publishing the full alien file of this staffer. Real transparency would be admitting how many non-citizens are currently on the city payroll. Real transparency would be telling the taxpayers how much this legal defense is going to cost. But they don't want that transparency. They want the transparency of a one-way mirror. They watch you, they tax you, but you can't see what they are doing. Let's speculate for a moment on the political timing. Why are they making such a loud noise about this specific case? Is it because they are trying to distract from the corruption investigations swirling around City Hall? Is it because the mayor's approval ratings are in the toilet? Nothing unites the fractured left like a common enemy, and the evil ICE agents are the perfect boogeyman to rally the base. They are using this human being, this detained staffer, as a political prop. They don't actually care about him or her as a person. If they did, they wouldn't have put them in a high-profile position that invites scrutiny. They are using this case to fundraise, to mobilize activists, and to signal their virtue. It is cynical, it is calculated, and it is disgusting. The advocates at the press conference warned of a climate of fear. Let's talk about these advocates. Who are they? Usually, they are staff from NGOs, non-governmental organizations, that receive millions in government grants to assist migrants. Their entire business model depends on a steady flow of people entering the country and navigating the system. If the laws were enforced, if the border was closed, if the backlog was cleared, these advocates would be out of a job. They have a financial incentive to keep the chaos going. They profit from the misery of the migrant and the confusion of the system. When ICE enforces the law, it threatens their revenue stream. So of course they are screaming. It's not about human rights, it's about job security for the grievance industry. And what about the message this sends to the rest of the world? If you are sitting in a village in South America or West Africa, and you see a headline that says New York City fights federal government to protect detained staffer, what do you think? You think, I just need to get there. You think, once I am in New York, the government itself will fight for me to stay. It is the ultimate pull factor. Every time these politicians open their mouths to condemn enforcement, they are effectively writing an advertisement for the cartels. They are fueling the very crisis they claim to want to solve. They are the best marketing team the human smugglers could ask for. We need to steal ourselves. This is going to get uglier. As the federal government ramps up enforcement, which it must do to save this country, we are going to see more of these stories. We will see teachers detained, doctors detained, maybe even police officers detained if they were hired under these loose standards. The media will play the violin music. They will show photos of crying families. They will try to break your resolve. But you have to remember, A meaningful change is hard. Restoring order after years of chaos is painful. It is like setting a broken bone, it hurts before it heals. But if we don't set the bone, if we let the limb rot, the patient dies. The patient is America. An ICE is just trying to stop the infection. The City Council of New York is standing on the wrong side of history. They are betting that the American people are too soft, too distracted, or too guilt-ridden to demand the enforcement of their own laws. They are betting that if they scream racism loud enough, we will all back down. But I think they are miscalculating. I think the pendulum has swung. I think people are tired of being told that up is down and illegal is legal. The detention of this staffer is a wake-up call. It proves that nobody is above the law, not even the people who write the press releases for the city council. And that, my friends, is a victory for the Republic. Now, I want you to think about the average legal immigrant for a second. I know many of them. They are some of the most patriotic people in this country. They have the framed certificate of naturalization on their wall. They know the Constitution better than most college students. How do you think they feel watching this? They feel cheated. They feel like suckers. They played by the rules, waited their turn, paid their dues. And now they see someone who skirted the system getting a government job and a taxpayer-funded defense team. It breeds resentment. It destroys the melting pot. Fairness is the glue that holds a diverse society together. When you remove fairness, when you reward those who cut the line, the glue dissolves. The City Council is dissolving the glue of our society. This isn't just a New York story. This is a story about every town in America that is being asked to absorb the costs of this broken system. New York is just the loudest example. But what happens there eventually spreads. If they win this fight, if they force ICE to back down, it sets a precedent that local government employment is a sanctuary in itself. It means any mayor in any town can hire anyone illegally present, and then claim interference if the feds try to remove them. It would be the end of federal immigration enforcement as we know it. That is the stake here. It is not about one guy in a suit, it is about the supremacy of the federal government to define who gets to live and work in the United States. Let's circle back to this idea that the City Council is exploring all legal options. I want you to really listen to the arrogance dripping from that statement. They are talking about using municipal resources to challenge the plenary power of the United States Congress and the executive branch over immigration. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of how our republic works. The Constitution is crystal clear. Article 1, Section 8 gives Congress the power to establish a uniform rule of naturalization. It doesn't say except when the New York City Council disagrees. It doesn't say unless the person is really nice and has a government job. The legal standing of the city in this case is practically non-existent. Any honest constitutional scholar, even a liberal one, would tell you that states and cities cannot interfere with federal immigration enforcement. But they don't care about winning the lawsuit. They care about the performance. They care about stalling. They care about tying up the courts so that the deportation machine grinds to a halt. This is what we call lawfare. They are weaponizing the legal system to achieve political goals that they cannot achieve at the ballot box. They know the American people want borders. They know the voters want order. So, since they can't win the argument, they try to sue their way into a victory. They are willing to burn millions of dollars in legal fees just to delay the inevitable. And while they are playing these games, real criminals are slipping through the cracks because ICE resources are being diverted to deal with these frivolous challenges. Every hour a federal attorney spends fighting the city of New York is an hour they aren't spending prosecuting a cartel leader or a human trafficker. The obstructionism of these sanctuary politicians has a body count attached to it, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Consider the two-tier justice system we are witnessing in real time. If you, a tax-paying American citizen, decide to stop paying your taxes because you disagree with how the money is spent, what happens? The IRS freezes your accounts. They put a lien on your house. They might even send agents to your door. Does the city council hold a press conference for you? Do they call it a dangerous overreach? No. They call you a criminal. But when a non-citizen violates the sovereign borders of this nation, suddenly the rules change. Suddenly, accountability is racist. Suddenly, enforcement is violence. They have created a caste system where the law-abiding citizen is at the bottom, constantly scrutinized and penalized, while the law-breaking non-citizen is at the top, protected and coddled. This Stafford incident is the perfect microcosm of this inverted reality. The staffer was at a court appointment. Think about that. They were already in the legal system for something. We don't know what, but regular people don't just hang out at courthouses for fun. Instead of asking why was a city council employee in court, the media asks, why did ICE go there? They completely ignore the behavior of the individual to focus on the behavior of the enforcement agency. It is a classic deflection tactic. It is like blaming the referee for blowing the whistle when a player commits a foul. The problem isn't the whistle, the problem is the foul. But in the twisted logic of the progressive left, the rules are the problem, and the rule breakers are the heroes. We also need to address the trust argument again, because it is so insidious. They say this destroys trust in government. I would argue that what destroys trust is finding out that your government is hiring people who might not even be legally allowed to be here permanently. How can you trust the city council to manage a budget of billions of dollars when they can't even vet their own staff properly? How can you trust them to keep you safe when they are actively fighting the agencies responsible for national security? The trust they are talking about is the trust of the criminal class. They want criminals to trust that the city will protect them from the consequences of their actions. That is not the kind of trust a functioning society should aspire to. We should want the trust of the victims, the trust of the workers, the trust of the families. And right now, New York City has lost that trust completely. Let's talk about the unspoken reality of the labor market here. Why are they fighting so hard for this? Because the entire modern Democrat coalition is built on the promise of amnesty. They look at the demographics and they see their future voters. They believe that if they can just hold off enforcement long enough, if they can just delay the deportations until 2026 or 2028 or whenever, eventually they will get a blanket amnesty passed. Every person they save from deportation today is a potential vote for big government tomorrow. This isn't charity, it is political recruitment. They are importing a dependent class that will reliably vote for the party that promises them the most benefits. It is a cynical, long-term strategy to fundamentally change the electorate of the United States. And look at the psychological projection. They call the Republicans threats to democracy. Yet, here they are, actively undermining the laws passed by a democratically elected Congress. Immigration laws are not suggestions, they are statutes passed by the representatives of the people. When a local official decides to ignore them, they are saying, "My personal opinion is more important than the democratic will of the American people." That is the definition of authoritarianism. They are the ones threatening democracy. They are the ones acting like dictators in their little municipal kingdoms. They believe they have the divine right to nullify federal law. It is the spirit of nullification, the same spirit that nearly tore this country apart in the 19th century. The media's role in this cannot be overstated. Watch how they interview the advocates with soft lighting and sympathetic nods. Then watch how they talk about the ICE agents, faceless, menacing, armed. They are directing a movie, not reporting the news. They want you to identify with the person breaking the law and despise the person enforcing it. They use emotional blackmail. Oh, he has a family. Oh, he was just doing his job. Well, the ICE agents have families too. The victims of crimes committed by illegal aliens have families too. But you never hear their stories on the nightly news in New York. The narrative is strictly controlled to manufacture consent for open borders. They are trying to shame you into silence. They want you to feel like a bad person for thinking that laws should matter. But here is the good news, the shame tactics aren't working anymore. People are seeing through it. When they see a city council staffer getting arrested, they don't think, "Oh, poor guy." They think, "What the hell is going on in City Hall?" They think, "Why are my taxes going up while the city defends illegal immigrants?" The disconnect between the ruling elite and the common man has never been wider. The elite live in a world of global citizenship and universal rights. The common man lives in a world of bills, crime, and borders. This arrest is a collision of those two worlds. And the elite are terrified because they know they are outnumbered. They know that if the average New Yorker actually understood the extent of the sanctuary scam, they would vote every single incumbent out of office. Let's speculate on the aggressive enforcement tactics they complained about. What does that mean? Did the agents use a tank? Did they use tear gas? No. They probably walked up, identified themselves, and put handcuffs on. That is standard police procedure. But to the soft, sheltered class of bureaucrats, any exercise of authority feels like aggression. They are so used to getting their way, so used to being deferred to, that being told no feels like violence to them. It is the reaction of a spoiled child. "You can't arrest him, he works for us." That is the mentality. They truly believe they are a protected species. And what about the other employees in City Hall? There are thousands of people working there. Most of them are probably law-abiding citizens. How do they feel? Do they feel safe knowing that the vetting process is a joke? Do they feel valued knowing that the administration will go to the mat for a non-citizen but probably wouldn't lift a finger if a regular employee had a dispute? It creates a toxic workplace. It breeds suspicion. It lowers morale. But the leadership doesn't care about morale, they care about the narrative. They are willing to sacrifice the cohesion of their own workforce to score points in the culture war. We also have to look at the date mentioned, illegal work authorization until 2026. This is a key piece of the puzzle. It suggests this person likely received some form of temporary status, perhaps TPS, or parole. These statuses are, by definition, temporary. They are not a promise of permanence. They can be revoked if conditions change or if the individual violates the terms. The left treats temporary as forever. They believe that once you set foot on American soil, you have a God-given right to stay forever, regardless of the law. This sense of entitlement is what drives the crisis. If we actually enforce the temporary part of temporary protected status, the system might work. But we don't. And when we try, like in this case, the outrage machine spins up to 100%. Think about the sheer number of people in New York City right now who are in this limbo status. Hundreds of thousands. The city is buckling under the weight. The schools are overcrowded, the emergency rooms are full, the shelters are bursting. And yet, the city council's priority is to fight for the right of one of these individuals to keep a government job. It shows a complete detachment from reality. They should be working with ICE to deport criminals and relieve the burden on the city. Instead, they are fighting ICE to keep the burden in place. It is a suicide pact. They are so committed to their ideology that they are willing to destroy the city to prove they are right. This incident serves as a stark reminder that the deep state isn't just in Washington, D.C. It is in your local city hall. It is in your school board. It is in your county clerk's office. There is a network of unelected bureaucrats and elected officials who are actively working against the interests of the American citizen. They are the ones writing the sanctuary policies. They are the ones instructing police not to cooperate with ICE. They are the ones hiring non-citizens for sensitive positions. This arrest peeled back the curtain for just a second, and we saw the gears of the machine. We saw how quickly they circled the wagons. We saw how organized they are. And it should serve as a warning: if we want to take our country back, we have to fight at the local level too. We can't just focus on the White House. We need to look at who is running our cities. The climate of fear they warn about is actually a climate of accountability. And accountability is always scary to those who have been getting away with murder, figuratively and sometimes literally, for years. They fear that the gravy train is ending. They fear that the era of no consequences is over. They fear that the American people are finally saying enough. And they should be afraid. Because when a democracy finally wakes up to corruption, the correction is usually swift and severe. We are seeing the early tremors of that correction now. This detention is just one tremor. The earthquake is coming. In the coming days, watch what happens. Watch the lawsuits they file. Read the briefs. You will see arguments that are completely untethered from the Constitution. You will see appeals to international human rights and norms rather than American law. That is the tell. When they can't cite the US Code, they cite the UN Charter. It confirms that they see themselves as citizens of the world first, and Americans second, if at all. This is the root of the problem. We are being governed by people who do not believe in the sovereignty of the nation they govern. It is like having a CEO who doesn't believe in the company. It is a recipe for disaster. So, when you see the headlines screaming about ICE cruelty and city council outrage, translated in your head, read it as, a federal government enforces law, local elites panic. That is the real headline. That is the truth. And the truth is the only thing that is going to save us. We need to support the brave men and women of ICE who are doing a thankless, dangerous job in hostile territory. They are operating behind enemy lines in New York City. They deserve our backing, not our scorn. They are the thin line holding back total chaos. And every time they make an arrest like this, they are putting a brick back in the wall of our national security. We are going to take a short break, but when we come back, we are going to talk about what you can do. How do we stop our tax dollars from funding this madness? How do we hold these local officials accountable? And what does the future hold if we don't turn this ship around? Stay tuned, because the fight for America is happening right now, and you are on the front lines. Let's shift gears and talk about the economics of this insanity, because that is where the rubber meets the road for every family watching this broadcast. We are living in an era of crushing inflation. You see it at the grocery store, you see it at the gas pump, you see it in your insurance premiums. Families are deciding between heating their homes and putting food on the table. And while you are tightening your belt, while you are scraping by, the New York City Council is opening the floodgates of the public treasury to defend a non-citizen from federal law enforcement. This is the ultimate form of taxation without representation. You are being taxed to fund a policy you never voted for, to protect a class of people who have no legal right to be here permanently. It is a redistribution of wealth from the American worker to the foreign national, brokered by the corrupt political class. Think about the salary of this staffer. In New York City, government jobs pay well. We are likely talking about a salary that is higher than what the average American makes in many parts of the country. Plus benefits. Plus pension contributions. All funded by the taxpayer. So, we have a situation where an American citizen in Ohio or Florida is paying federal taxes, which go to grants that support New York, which then pays the salary of someone ICE says should be detained. Your money is being laundered through the bureaucracy to undermine your own country's laws. It is a financial slap in the face. And when the city council says they will explore all legal options, they are effectively saying they have a blank check. They don't care if the lawsuit costs $1 million. It's not their money. It's yours. And we have to connect the dots to the voting issue. New York City actually tried to pass a law allowing non-citizens to vote in municipal elections. Thankfully, the court struck it down, but the intent was clear. They want to blur the line between citizen and resident until it disappears completely. Hiring non-citizens for government staff positions is part of the same agenda. It is about normalizing the idea that citizenship is irrelevant. If you can work for the government, draft policy, and influence decisions without being a citizen, then why not vote? That is their logic. They are moving the goalposts inch by inch. Today, it's a staffer. Tomorrow, it's a council member. The day after that, it's a voter. This arrest serves as a speed bump in their plan, which is why they are so furious. It interrupts the normalization process. We are witnessing the weaponization of empathy. The left uses empathy as a shield to deflect criticism. If you ask about the cost, you are heartless. If you ask about the law, you are cruel. But true compassion includes compassion for the citizens of this country. Where is the compassion for the veteran sleeping on the street because the shelter is full of migrants? Where is the compassion for the working mom who can't get her kid into a summer program because the budget was cut to pay for legal defense funds? The city council has finite resources. Every dollar they spend fighting ICE is a dollar they are taking away from an American in need. It is a zero-sum game, and they have chosen their side. They have chosen the non-citizen over the citizen. This incident also exposes the Trojan horse nature of the sanctuary city philosophy. When they first sold these policies, they told us it was about safety. They said, "We need undocumented immigrants to feel safe reporting crimes." Okay, that was the sales pitch. But look at what it has morphed into. It has morphed into a shield for government employment. It has morphed into a blockage of federal warrants. It has morphed into a state-sponsored resistance movement against the United States. They lied. They used the guise of public safety to build a fortress of noncompliance. And now that the fortress is being breached by ICE, they are screaming because their true intentions are being laid bare. Let's look at the advocacy industrial complex. The press conference was filled with advocates. These are not neutral observers. These are professional agitators. Many of these organizations are essentially arms of the Democrat Party, funded by dark money and government grants. They exist to manufacture outrage. They have pre-written press releases ready to go. They have the signs printed. They have the chants rehearsed. This was a staged political theater designed to intimidate ICE agents and bully the public into submission. But notice what they didn't talk about. They didn't talk about the specific legal reasons for the detention. They didn't talk about the law. They only talked about feelings and fear. That is because on the facts, and on the law, they lose. They only win if they can keep the conversation in the realm of emotion. We need to ask ourselves, what is the endgame here? If New York City wins this fight, if they successfully pressure the federal government to release this staffer and apologize, what message does that send? It declares open season. It tells every other liberal city, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, that they can hire whoever they want, regardless of status, and the federal government is powerless to stop them. It creates a fractured nation where federal law applies in some places but not others. That is not a country, that is a collection of tribes. And history tells us that nations that lose their common law and common border do not survive for long. We are flirting with disaster. There is also a national security angle that is being completely ignored. We are living in a dangerous world. We have enemies abroad who wish us harm. When you have a government body like the NYC Council that is lax on vetting, that prioritizes inclusivity over security, you create vulnerabilities. How do we know who this person really is? Documents can be forged. Identities can be stolen. If ICE, the agency with access to international databases, says this person needs to be detained, we should listen. The arrogance of a local council member thinking they know better than federal intelligence and law enforcement agencies is staggering. They are playing Russian roulette with the safety of their city to score political points. And don't forget the cultural impact. What does it do to the morale of the legal immigrant community? I want to harp on this because it is vital. The Republican Party is the party of legal immigration. We welcome people who come here the right way, who salute the flag, who embrace our values. But when the system rewards those who bypass the rules, it mocks the law-abiding. I have spoken to legal immigrants who are furious. They feel like they are being treated as second-class citizens because they didn't break the law. They don't get the free lawyers. They don't get the press conferences. They just get the bill. The city council is alienating the very people they claim to represent. They are driving legal immigrants into the arms of the Republican Party, because we are the only ones saying, your effort mattered. The law matters. Let's talk about the climate of fear one more time. You know what creates a healthy climate? Deterrence. If you break the law, you should be afraid of getting caught. That is how civilization works. If you drive drunk, you fear a DUI. If you steal, you fear jail. If you are here illegally, you should fear deportation. That is not cruelty, that is order. The city council wants to remove the consequence from the action. They want a society without consequences. But a society without consequences is a society in chaos. Look at the shoplifting epidemic. No consequences, so everyone does it. Look at the bail reform disaster. No consequences, so criminals re-offend. Now apply that logic to immigration. If there is no fear of deportation, why would anyone ever come legally? Why would anyone wait in line? They wouldn't. The climate of fear they decry is actually the only thing standing between us and a total collapse of the border. The media keeps using the word routine to describe the court appointment. He was just at a routine appointment. There is nothing routine about being a foreign national in federal crosshairs. They try to make it sound mundane to lower your defenses. They want you to think this could happen to you. But it can't happen to you, provided you are a citizen or a legal resident in good standing. This is a specific action against a specific individual for specific reasons. Do not let them universalize this. Do not let them make you feel like your rights are under attack. The rights of the sovereign citizen are under attack by the city council, not by ICE. We also need to consider the morale of the ICE agents themselves. These men and women are heroes. They go to work every day knowing that half the country has been brainwashed to hate them. They are spit on, shouted at, and demonized by politicians who have never walked a beat in their lives. And yet, they continue to do their duty. They continue to enforce the laws that keep us safe. This arrest was a bold move. It shows that despite the political pressure, despite the hate, there are still patriots in the federal government who are willing to do the right thing. We need to have their backs. We need to be as loud in our support for ICE as the left is in their condemnation. The City Council says this undermines government transparency. Let's flip that. What undermines transparency is a government that hides the status of its employees. What undermines transparency is a city that refuses to share data with federal agencies. What undermines transparency is a mayor who speaks in riddles about the migrant crisis. They are the opaque ones. They are the ones operating in the shadows. ICE is operating in the light of day, enforcing the written law of the land. The projection is off the charts. Every accusation they make is actually a confession. We are watching the death throes of a failed ideology. The ideology of open borders and sanctuary cities has hit the wall of reality. New York is broke. The social services are overwhelmed. The people are angry. This arrest is a symptom of that failure. The federal government is finally stepping in because the local government has abdicated its responsibility. The city council is lashing out like a cornered animal because they know the jig is up. They know they can't sustain this. They know the voters are turning against them. So they pick a fight with ICE to try and rally the base. But it's not working. The American people are smarter than that. So, where do we go from here? This case is going to move through the courts. The city council will spend millions of your dollars. The advocates will stage protests. But the facts remain the same. The law is the law. And as we head into the next election cycle, this is going to be a defining issue. Do you want a country where the laws are enforced, or do you want a country where local politicians can pick and choose which laws to follow? Do you want a government that hires American citizens, or one that prioritizes foreign nationals? The choice is binary. There is no middle ground anymore. You are either for the rule of law, or you are for the rule of the mob. And let's be clear about the work authorization until 2026 again. Even if that paper is technically valid, it doesn't grant immunity from other violations. You can have a driver's license, but if you drive drunk, you get arrested. You can have a fishing license, but if you dynamite the lake, you get arrested. A work permit is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. The city council is treating it like a diplomatic passport. It's absurd. It's legal illiteracy on a massive scale, peddled by people who should know better. Or maybe they do know better, and they are just lying to you. I'll let you decide which is worse, incompetence or malice. As we wrap up this segment, I want you to look at the faces of those city council members in the news clips. Look at the indignation. Look at the self-righteousness. They really believe they are the good guys. They really believe that protecting a deportable individual is a noble act. That is what we are up against. We are not just fighting bad policy, we are fighting a warped morality. We are fighting a worldview that sees America as the problem and the rest of the world as the victim. It is a spiritual battle as much as a political one. And we cannot afford to lose. This staffer, whoever they are, is just a pawn. They are a pawn in a game being played by powerful interests who want to erase our borders. But the king, the American voter, is starting to wake up. And when the king moves, the pawns fall. The city council can scream all they want, but the momentum is shifting. The era of the sanctuary city is coming to an end. It is collapsing under the weight of its own hypocrisy. And incidents like this are just the cracks in the dam before the water breaks through. Stay with me. In the final hour, we are going to lay out the battle plan. We are going to talk about how to take this anger and turn it into action. Because getting mad isn't enough. We have to get organized. We have to get busy. The future of our republic depends on it. Ladies and gentlemen, as we close out this hour, I want you to take a moment to really let the gravity of this situation sink in. We have spent the last 60 minutes dissecting a single incident in New York City, the detention of a city council staffer by ICE. But as we have peeled back the layers, we have discovered that this isn't just about one arrest. It isn't just about one courthouse. It is a symptom of a systemic disease that is eating away at the very foundation of our republic. We are witnessing a local government that has gone rogue, a political class that has turned its back on its own citizens, and a legal system that is being twisted into a pretzel to accommodate those who have broken our laws. The New York City Council wants you to believe that they are the victims here. They want you to see them as the brave defenders of the downtrodden. But do not be fooled by their theater. They are not defenders, they are enablers. They are enabling a crisis that is bankrupting our cities, overcrowding our schools, and making our streets less safe. They are prioritizing the comfort of the foreign national over the security of the American family. And today, they crossed a red line. By openly attacking federal law enforcement for doing their job, they have declared that their ideology is more important than the Constitution of the United States. But here is the truth that they are terrified of. You are watching. The American people are watching. For years, they operated in the shadows, passing these sanctuary policies while we were busy working, raising our kids, and living our lives. They thought they could dismantle our borders without us noticing. But this arrest, and their hysterical reaction to it, has turned on the lights. We see the cockroach-like scurrying of the bureaucracy. We see the panic. And we realize that they are paper tigers. Their power only exists because we have allowed it to exist. We have been too polite, too quiet, too afraid of being called names. Well, the time for politeness is over. The time for silence is gone. If they want to call us intolerant for demanding secure borders, let them. If they want to call us heartless for prioritizing American citizens, so be it. I would rather be called names by the New York Times than see my country dissolve into a borderless administrative zone. We need to wear their insults like a badge of honor. Because when they attack us, it means we are threatening their control. It means we are winning. So, what do we do now? What is the battle plan? First, we need to get involved locally. This story proves that the war for America isn't just happening in the White House or Congress, it is happening in your city hall. It is happening in your county commission. These are the places where the decisions are made about who gets hired, where the money goes, and whether your town becomes a sanctuary. You need to show up. You need to run for office. You need to demand transparency. Ask your local officials, are we hiring non-citizens? Are we cooperating with ICE? Make them go on the record. If they answer wrong, primary them. Vote them out. Replace them with patriots who understand that their first duty is to you, the taxpayer. Second, we must support the men and women of ICE and Border Patrol. They are the guardians on the wall. They are the only thing standing between order and anarchy. When the media tries to smear them, we need to speak up. Write letters to the editor. Post on social media. Call your representatives and tell them to fund these agencies, not defund them. Tell them to unleash the handcuffs so these agents can do the job they were sworn to do. We cannot have a country without borders, and we cannot have borders without enforcement. It is that simple. Third, we need to relentlessly follow the money. The city council is using your tax dollars to fight the federal government. That is malfeasance. We need to demand audits. We need to know exactly how much money is being siphoned off to legal defense funds for deportable individuals. We need to make the argument that this is fiscal irresponsibility of the highest order. Even if your neighbor doesn't care about the immigration issue, they care about their wallet. Show them the bill. Show them the cost. Hit them in the pocketbook, and they will wake up. We are standing at a crossroads, my friends. Down one path lies the vision of the New York City Council, a post-national society where citizenship is meaningless, laws are optional, and the government serves the global population instead of the American people. Down the other path lies the vision of the founders, a sovereign nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all citizens. A nation where the rule of law is king, not the whims of a bureaucrat. A nation where we welcome those who come legally and respect our house, but where we firmly close the door on those who do not. The choice is yours. It is not enough to just watch the news and shake your head. You have to be the news. You have to be the force multiplier. Share this story. Talk to your neighbors. Wake them up. Because if we lose this fight, if we allow our cities to become independent fiefdoms that defy federal law, we lose the country. It is just that serious. But I am optimistic. I am optimistic because I see the desperation in the eyes of the left. They are overreaching. They are pushing too hard, too fast. And in doing so, they are waking up the sleeping giant of the American middle class. This detention in New York is just the beginning. It is the first crack of thunder in a storm of accountability that is coming for every sanctuary politician in this country. So, to the New York City Council, I say this: you can hold your press conferences. You can file your lawsuits. You can scream and cry and stomp your feet. But the law is coming. Reality is coming. And the American people are taking their country back, one city, one courthouse, one arrest at a time. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. And remember, this is your country. Fight for it. Protect it. Cherish it. because there is nowhere else like it on earth. From all of us here at the studio, good night, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.